LeVell, Executive Director of National Diversity Coalition for Trump. Bruce, always great to see you. Today, what are your thoughts on the president releasing his second-term agenda?
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me, Allison. Pure 100% adrenaline. Yeah. Listen, small business owner, 27 years here in Atlanta region here. One of the things that really attracted me to the president in 2016 was, really advocating bringing back the jobs and made in America, Allison. And one of the things, if you notice on your line items for your viewers, tax credits for made in America. My company is made in America. My buddy Mike Landrell, we love that. We know how strong that is. Allison, growing up as a child, the RCAs, the Zenith, all of those all of that was made in America. So I am so ecstatic that is one of those agendas. But most of all, Allison, the combat on COVID. The president's been very strong on combating COVID in terms of getting this vaccine. You saw one of the agenda items that will have a vaccine by the end of the year in terms of prophylactics, that's preventive in terms of COVID. So, getting this economy back open, really that's his #1 goal here, not to mention keeping these citizens safe, though, Allison.
Yeah, his message, Bruce, is all about hope and what he plans to do and how we can come back from what we've experienced, which is very different than what the Democrats were saying last week, because they seemed to just really be attacking the president and didn't really have a strategy or a message for what we would see the next 4 years if Joe Biden would get elected.
Yeah, it reminded me as a child watching the movie Lost in Space. They're just flying around. They're lost. What do we do? Warning, warning, Will Robinson. What do we do? I mean, that's really what it felt like, Allison. But in all sincerity, they know that they don't have a plan. How do you even compete with the lowest unemployment in the history of the United States? Watch this, Allison. How do you even compete under the Trump administration? Lowest black unemployment in my lifetime. Let me tell you something. News alert. Watch this on your show, Allison. Watch the African-American vote in 2020. It's going to blow your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, the president obviously talking about the COVID vaccine, as you mentioned, but the economy, right? If you were to go 4 or 5 months prior, the economy, we were in a great position, but we're still in a decent position considering everything we've gone through.
Right.
Small businesses, he obviously talked about that and bringing jobs back to America. But you as a small business owner, we're talking about the middle class. How important is it to get small businesses open, to make sure we have a vaccine, and to see the future where we don't shut down again?
Yeah, and great point there. Allison, watch this. Out of 30.6 million small businesses in the United States, we make up 42% of the GDP. We are the heart and soul of this great nation. And if we cough and sneeze and get sick and we can't do our business to go out and make it viable for this great nation, there is no economy, Allison. So he understands how critical guys like me and many of us across the country, we got to get back up and going. But the great thing about it is I built the greatest economy in the world 4 or 5 months ago, and I'm going to do it again. So that's something we have to be very optimistic about the president and his willingness and his drive.
Yeah, I want to get your reaction, too, about Kellyanne Conway. She announced that she will not be working for the Trump administration. Your thoughts on that?
Listen, Kellyanne's a great friend of mine. I just texted her last night, juggling, many hours. You got young kids. And this gets back to what she said in her news brief. I mean, in her release in terms of what's going on. Allison, all across the nation, it doesn't matter where you're at. It's affecting the kids that got to be at home. The mom's got to, or the dad's got to load up, the web and get the studies going. You got to have the laptop. You got to have a good Wi-Fi. All parents are going through this. So this says, listen, y'all got this. Let me go home and make sure that all my children are successful, and et cetera. So she is a mom, just like you saw Kaylee, my good friend Kaylee. The child comes to work sometimes. Yeah. We know that this administration is family first. It's always been focused on that. Ivanka, all the rest of the leaders in the White House, as well as administration, they know that the family always comes first. So I commend her. She's a great ally for the president. I love Kellyanne. We used to be on the panels together during I call it the war, the debate wars. So she's great, though. But
Yeah.
thanks for asking me about her. She's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, switching gears, now Biden had his first joint interview with his running mate, Kamala Harris, on ABC last night. David Muir brought up the contrast with these two campaigns, saying Trump is on the road campaigning and Biden's in his basement. And when asked if he can win that way, here's what Biden said.
But can you win a presidential election from home?
We will. We're going to follow the science, what the scientists tell us. We've been able to travel places when we've been able to do it in a way that we don't cause the congregation of large numbers of people. Look what happens, what's happened with his events. People die. People get together. They don't wear masks. They end up getting COVID. They end up dying.
So when you hear the president say this guy's afraid to leave his basement,
guess what? I have left my basement, but here, in the meantime, 500 million people have watched what I've done out of my basement. And guess what? People are listening.
Bruce, are people listening? Is this going to work for him?
You know what? Let me pivot on the Joe Biden thing for a minute. And I sincerely, what I'm about to tell you and your viewers. I had two relatives, uncles that went through dementia and Alzheimer. I'm not diagnosing Joe Biden. I'm not a doctor, but I'm gravely concerned on his handlers or advisors, holding him back and pushing him back. And I don't think that they're being totally honest with the American people on Joe Biden's ability to campaign, let alone do anything for that matter. Because in my personal opinion, I feel like something's not right. And I feel sorry for him because it's a very awkward moment, Allison, because here we have an elderly man, and you see the gaffes and the sentences that don't get completed. And he introduced, when he's talking to his wife, and he's mentioned himself. And, just there's many, many more. I'm not trying to, just bring up all the doom and gloom, but I'm gravely concerned on this man's ability and his health in terms of his handlers and his people cheering him along, knowing good and well, Allison, that something's not right with Joe. And that's in all sincerity. Forget about all the politics, whatever. I'm speaking from, a pastoral background on human care for our fellow man and woman. And I'm really, really concerned, Allison.
Yeah, I saw one of President Trump's ads, and it was comparing Joe Biden back in 2015 when he was speaking compared to now. And, forget the gaffes, Bruce, but I noticed a real lack of energy there just when he was just 5 years ago.
No, I get it, Allison. And that's the thing. That's the sad part about it. Because, you know how it is. When you're in leadership, you get encapsulated. And the most dangerous thing you can do is surround yourself with yes people. Because then you get in this what we call this bubble, and then there's not a really sense of reality. And that's why I'm pivoting back on the president, because president goes way out of those type of, traditional established bubbles or yes people around him. And he'll get folks that challenge him or get folks that are, and get a compilation of all different, debates and arguments or advice. And I don't think only advice Joe is getting is cheers around him and not really being honest with him, because I really in my heart don't believe that he wants to do this. And I really mean that.
Yeah. Going back to the RNC, Bruce, President's saying we're going to see him every night. Do you think that this is a good thing, or do you think it's kind of taking away from all of what would happen on Thursday when he speaks?
Listen, I can't tell you, Allison, but I can tell you this. It's going to be great. Listen, the president's biggest strength is always being accessible and speaking to the American people. Remember now, how many presidents have you seen in our lifetime, Allison, that will literally stand on a stage and just take any type of question, no matter what news, where you're from, whatever? Joe won't do that. I mean, my God, I saw CNN, MSNBC calling him out like, hey, can you at least come talk with us? When I saw Victor Blackwell and his guests say that, I was like, oh my gosh, they're calling you out. and there's a lot to the authenticity of the president, the organic style. He's like reaching into the screen and pulling you in like, hey, let's have a conversation. So I think it's who he is. It's being for the people, by the people, and being accessible, Allison. No matter what day or whatever it is. Listen, If he can get a chance to deliver a message and get out and talk to the people, the president will do it, and I commend him for that.
Yeah, he's certainly not afraid of the media. Absolutely.
No.
All right, Bruce LeVell, always great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
All right, thanks for having me.
Of course. And here's an update of some of the